Everyone, look at this. Latest GPS data. Speed has increased by 20% in the last 12 hours alone.
It's worse than that, Sarah. Look at this stress chart.
Squadron vanished in Greenland storm. 1942. Ground radar found them under 200 feet of ice. Dr. Sarah Lindqvist adjusted her ground-penetrating radar equipment on the Greenland ice sheet at 0800 on Wednesday morning, scanning for the lost squadron that had vanished into a blizzard 82 years ago. In 45 minutes, when her drone detected the unmistakable signature of P-38 Lightning fighters buried under 268 feet of solid ice, the most ambitious aircraft recovery in history would finally begin. Sarah 38 appears to be exactly what her credentials suggest, a glaciologist leading routine archaeological surveys for the Danish National Museum. But beneath her academic research lies a woman whose discovery of perfectly preserved World War II aircraft will expose how climate change is accelerating the release of secrets the ice was never meant to surrender. What happened on the Greenland ice cap would prove that some wartime stories never end. They just wait beneath the ice for technology to catch up with mystery. The Greenland ice sheet near Kogi Bay, a vast, unforgiving expanse where the lost squadron of 6 P-38 Lightning fighters and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers made their emergency landing on July 15, 1942, during Operation Bolero. The remote location, known to pilots as Piterack Alley for its tendency to spawn severe snowstorms, had swallowed the aircraft whole as decades of ice accumulation buried them deeper than a 20-story building. Recent climate change has begun shifting ice patterns throughout Greenland, causing concern among archaeologists that historical artifacts might be lost forever as glaciers move toward crevasse fields. Advanced ground-penetrating radar technology mounted on heavy-lift drones now enables searches in areas too dangerous for human teams, where hidden crevasses and polar bears make surface operations potentially fatal. This setting represents the intersection where cutting-edge technology meets frozen history, creating opportunities to recover artifacts that represent both military heritage and scientific challenges requiring international cooperation. Sarah completed her doctorate in glaciology at the University of Copenhagen, specializing in ice sheet dynamics and climate change impacts on archaeological preservation. Her interest in the lost squadron began during graduate research, when she discovered that ice accumulation rates in southeastern Greenland had accelerated dramatically since the 1940s, potentially threatening buried artifacts with crushing pressure or movement into dangerous crevasse fields. Her expertise in both glaciology and archaeological preservation made her uniquely qualified to lead recovery efforts that required understanding both ice conditions and historical artifact conservation under extreme conditions that few researchers had encountered. Sarah leads international expeditions combining climate research with historical archaeology, utilizing advanced radar technology to locate buried artifacts before climate change destroys them permanently. Her current project, funded by Danish heritage organizations and private investors, aims to locate and recover remaining lost squadron aircraft before glacial movement carries them into irretrievable crevasse fields. Her team includes Arctic survival specialists, aircraft restoration experts, and drone operators whose combined expertise enables operations in conditions that had defeated previous recovery attempts. Sarah's work represents the urgent intersection of heritage preservation and climate science, where warming temperatures create both opportunities and threats for recovering historical artifacts. Despite her academic focus, Sarah possesses practical engineering skills and risk assessment capabilities that enable complex recovery operations in extreme environments where theoretical knowledge must combine with hands-on problem-solving under life-threatening conditions. Her greatest strength is coordinating international teams whose diverse expertise creates synergistic capabilities that individual specialists couldn't achieve alone. Sarah's ability to balance scientific methodology with practical logistics enables recovery projects that require both scholarly precision and operational flexibility when Arctic conditions demand immediate tactical adaptation. Her leadership style emphasizes safety and systematic documentation while maintaining enthusiasm for discoveries that bridge scientific research and historical preservation through challenging operations. Sarah must coordinate recovery of lost Squadron aircraft before accelerating climate change either destroys them through ice movement or makes them unreachable through advancing crevasse fields while managing international logistics and extreme weather that have already delayed operations until 2026. The primary obstacle is environmental time pressure created by climate change that threatens to destroy or permanently bury aircraft before recovery technology can reach them, while extreme Arctic conditions limit operation windows to brief summer periods when weather permits safe excavation. The stakes involve both historical preservation and scientific opportunity. Successful recovery could provide unprecedented insights into aircraft preservation under ice while honoring World War II veterans. But failure could result in permanent loss of irreplaceable historical artifacts that represent crucial military heritage and technological achievements. This conflict represents the challenge facing modern archaeologists, whose race against climate change requires combining cutting-edge technology with extreme environment operations that test human endurance and international cooperation under conditions that leave no margin for error. Sarah's expedition began as climate research documenting ice accumulation rates, but evolved into urgent archaeological recovery when ground-penetrating radar revealed that lost Squadron aircraft remained intact, despite decades of crushing ice pressure that should have destroyed them completely. The radar signatures are incredibly clear, Sarah observed while analyzing drone survey data, showing 6 P-38 fighters and 2 B-17 bombers positioned exactly as they had landed in 1942, preserved in formation beneath 268 feet of solid ice that had accumulated with remarkable speed. The discovery attracted international attention from aviation museums, military historians, and private collectors, whose combined funding enabled comprehensive recovery operations requiring specialized equipment and expertise that individual organizations couldn't provide independently through normal archaeological channels. Arctic Hot Point Solutions, led by Jim Salazar and Ken McBride, provided technical expertise from their previous success recovering Glacier Girl in 1992, while Sarah's glaciological knowledge enabled safe excavation techniques that previous attempts had lacked. This isn't just aircraft recovery, Sarah explained to expedition sponsors. It's a race against climate change to preserve irreplaceable military heritage before glacial movement destroys evidence that took 82 years to locate and may be impossible to find again if current ice conditions continue changing at accelerated rates. The mission had evolved from scientific research to heritage preservation, requiring international coordination and cutting-edge technology applications that pushed archaeological recovery beyond conventional limitations. Sarah's recovery strategy required coordinating multiple international teams whose specialized expertise created comprehensive capabilities for operating in extreme Arctic conditions while maintaining scientific documentation standards that would satisfy both archaeological requirements and aviation restoration needs. Her approach emphasized phased operations, beginning with detailed radar mapping to determine exact aircraft positions and ice conditions, followed by thermal excavation using heated water systems that could create access shafts without damaging delicate aircraft components through sudden temperature changes. Most critically, Sarah prepared contingency plans for handling climate-related complications, including sudden weather changes, ice movement, and crevasse development that could threaten both personnel safety and recovery operations during the narrow summer window when Arctic conditions permitted excavation activities. Her equipment selection included ground-penetrating radar drones capable of operating in extreme cold thermal excavation systems. Based on successful Glacier Girl recovery techniques and specialized lifting equipment designed for extracting large aircraft components through narrow ice shafts. Sarah also prepared international logistics frameworks for shipping recovered aircraft components to restoration facilities while ensuring proper documentation for museums and heritage organizations whose support enabled comprehensive recovery operations rather than selective component retrieval. Her coordination with Danish authorities established legal frameworks for international recovery operations on Greenland territory while ensuring that recovered aircraft would be appropriately preserved for educational and memorial purposes rather than private collection that could remove them from public access. Sarah's initial survey operations utilized heavy-lift drones equipped with advanced ground-penetrating radar to map lost squadron positions with precision that exceeded previous recovery attempts. By providing real-time, three-dimensional imagery of aircraft conditions beneath the ice. The radar penetration is remarkable, Sarah noted, while examining data showing individual aircraft components clearly defined despite burial depth that had defeated earlier location attempts using conventional surface-based radar systems with limited penetration capabilities. The survey revealed that ice preservation had maintained aircraft structural integrity beyond expectations, with hydraulic systems still containing fluid and metal components, showing minimal corrosion despite decades of exposure to moisture and pressure conditions. Danish heritage officials provided expedition permits, while Greenlandic authorities ensured environmental compliance for excavation operations that would disturb ice formations without causing permanent environmental damage to glacier systems. International aviation museums expressed immediate interest in recovered aircraft for display and educational programs, while military veterans organizations supported heritage preservation efforts that would honor lost squadron crew members whose survival story had become legendary among aviation enthusiasts. The expedition had established comprehensive support networks, combining scientific expertise, heritage preservation, and international cooperation that provided foundation for recovery operations requiring unprecedented coordination and technical capability in extreme Arctic conditions. Sarah's initial excavation attempts revealed ice conditions far more complex than glaciological models had predicted, with varying density layers and unexpected void spaces that created both opportunities and hazards for accessing buried aircraft without causing structural collapse. The thermal excavation system required constant adjustment to prevent ice reformation while avoiding rapid temperature changes that could damage preserved aircraft components through thermal shock. Ground-penetrating radar indicated that glacial movement had shifted aircraft positions slightly from their original landing coordinates, requiring real-time navigation adjustments during excavation operations that demanded precision drilling through 268 feet of solid ice while maintaining exact directional accuracy toward moving targets beneath the surface. Environmental conditions intensified when unexpected early winter weather threatened to terminate excavation operations before complete aircraft recovery could be achieved, forcing acceleration of extraction timeline while maintaining safety protocols for personnel working in increasingly dangerous ice shaft conditions. Sarah discovered that climate change had created unpredictable ice movement patterns that could trap excavation equipment or collapse access shafts without warning, requiring continuous monitoring of glacial stress indicators while coordinating complex lifting operations. The first P-38 recovery revealed remarkably complete preservation, including original paint, hydraulic fluid, and even personal items left by pilots validating recovery techniques, while demonstrating the urgent need to extract remaining aircraft before environmental conditions deteriorated further. The situation reached crisis when accelerating ice movement toward dangerous crevasse fields created deadline pressure for completing recovery operations before lost Squadron aircraft became permanently unreachable through glacial drift that could carry them beyond safe excavation zones. Sarah faced operational decisions balancing personnel safety against heritage preservation when weather windows shortened and equipment failures threatened to terminate expeditions without recovering aircraft that might never be accessible again through future technological capabilities. International funding pressures created additional complications as sponsors demanded progress guarantees that Arctic conditions couldn't provide, while media attention attracted government oversight that slowed operations through regulatory requirements designed for conventional archaeological work rather than extreme environment recovery operations. The lost Squadron recovery attracted global media attention that created both support and complications, as international coverage brought funding opportunities while generating political pressure for rapid results that Arctic conditions couldn't accommodate within normal expedition timelines. Environmental activists expressed concerns about ice sheet disruption despite scientific evidence that recovery operations created minimal long-term glacial impact compared to ongoing climate change effects that threaten permanent artifact destruction through natural processes. Military heritage organizations provided crucial support while demanding authentic restoration standards that required complete documentation and careful component handling during extraction operations that extreme conditions made challenging to execute with museum-quality precision. Government oversight from Danish, American, and Greenlandic authorities required extensive permitting and environmental compliance that delayed operations while ensuring appropriate international cooperation for heritage preservation activities conducted on Greenland territory. Private collectors and aviation enthusiasts created funding pressure while expressing competing interests in recovered aircraft disposition, requiring clear legal frameworks for ensuring public access to historically significant artifacts recovered through international cooperation rather than private investment alone. The convergence of scientific research, heritage preservation, international politics, and extreme environment operations created unprecedented coordination challenges that tested Sarah's leadership capabilities while demanding diplomatic skills beyond typical archaeological expedition requirements. Facing extreme Arctic conditions while coordinating international recovery operations tested Sarah's ability to balance scientific methodology with practical leadership demands when personnel safety and heritage preservation created competing priorities requiring immediate tactical decisions. The expedition forced Sarah to develop crisis management skills that glaciological research hadn't required, adapting scholarly approaches to operational leadership. When equipment failures and weather emergencies demanded immediate problem-solving under life-threatening conditions that left no time for theoretical analysis. Her response to mounting pressure revealed character development. Through extreme environment leadership, she maintained scientific precision while making pragmatic decisions, balanced perfectionist academic standards against operational reality, and prioritized team safety over achievement pressure when conditions exceeded acceptable risk parameters. The confrontation with climate change timelines crystallized Sarah's understanding of archaeological urgency. Heritage preservation sometimes required accepting incomplete recovery rather than risking total loss through perfectionist delays that changing environmental conditions couldn't accommodate. Sarah's expedition leadership strengthened under pressure, proving that scientific training could adapt to operational command when extreme conditions required decisive action rather than theoretical analysis, while her commitment to heritage preservation provided motivation for pushing operational boundaries safely. Her successful coordination of international expertise demonstrated that academic research could achieve practical results when combined with operational experience and diplomatic skills that extreme environment archaeology demanded. As climate change accelerated ice movement toward dangerous crevasse fields while shortening operational windows through increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, Sarah's expedition approached critical decisions where complete recovery might become impossible despite technological advances and international cooperation. Her discovery that aircraft preservation exceeded all expectations created pressure for perfect recovery, while environmental conditions demanded accepting partial success before total loss through glacial movement that could carry lost Squadron beyond technological reach permanently. The expedition had achieved unprecedented archaeological success while demonstrating that climate change created urgent timelines for heritage preservation that traditional academic approaches couldn't accommodate through deliberate scholarly methodology that extreme conditions didn't permit. International funding created sustainability pressures for continued operations, while Arctic conditions limited access to brief summer windows that weather patterns made increasingly unreliable through climate change effects that threatened to terminate recovery efforts permanently. Sarah's coordination challenges indicated that future heritage preservation would require combining academic expertise with operational leadership capabilities. That conventional archaeological training didn't provide for extreme environment expeditions requiring international cooperation under life-threatening conditions. The convergence of technological capability, environmental urgency, and international heritage interest created perfect conditions for demonstrating whether modern archaeology could adapt to climate change challenges while preserving irreplaceable historical artifacts for future generations. Sarah's expedition faced complete crisis when accelerating glacial movement threatened to carry the remaining lost Squadron aircraft into an irretrievable crevasse field within days, forcing immediate extraction decisions that could either save irreplaceable historical artifacts or result in personnel casualties through rushed operations in deteriorating conditions. "The ice is moving faster than our models predicted," Sarah reported, while monitoring GPS data showing dangerous acceleration toward crevasse zones that would make further recovery impossible, creating deadline pressure that safety protocols couldn't accommodate without accepting unprecedented operational risks. The situation exploded into emergency operations when weather forecasts indicated incoming storms that would terminate the brief Arctic summer window before critical aircraft components could be extracted, while equipment failures threatened to strand excavation teams in ice shafts that glacial movement could collapse without warning. "We have 48 hours maximum," expedition engineer Marcus Holberg calculated while analyzing structural stress data, showing ice formations approaching failure thresholds that could crush remaining aircraft or bury them permanently beneath crevasse collapse that recovery technology couldn't penetrate. Sarah faced impossible choice between attempting rapid extraction that could result in team casualties or abandoning aircraft that might never be accessible again through future expeditions if glacial movement continued at accelerated rates that climate change was driving beyond historical precedent. The crisis transcended individual expedition success to involve heritage preservation implications, whether lost Squadron aircraft would be saved for future generations or lost permanently through climate change effects that human activity had accelerated beyond natural glacial movement patterns that previous recovery expeditions had not encountered. Emergency evacuation plans activated as extreme weather approached, while critical aircraft components remained trapped in ice formations that required precise extraction techniques incompatible with accelerated timeline that survival considerations demanded for personnel safety. Standing on unstable ice while monitoring glacial movement data that showed lost Squadron aircraft approaching irretrievable crevasse zones, Sarah confronted fundamental choice between attempting dangerous extraction operations or accepting permanent loss of irreplaceable World War II heritage that future technology might never recover. The safe choice was immediate evacuation terminate operations before weather conditions became life-threatening, accepting partial recovery success while preserving team safety and expedition resources for potential future attempts when technology and conditions might enable safer operations. But Sarah realized that climate change acceleration meant future expeditions might never find conditions suitable for recovery operations. While lost Squadron aircraft represented irreplaceable military heritage that current technology could still save through operations exceeding normal safety parameters. "If we evacuate now, these aircraft disappear forever," Sarah calculated, while storm warnings indicated approaching weather that would prevent operations for a remainder of Arctic summer season. "If we continue, we risk team safety for heritage preservation that might justify extraordinary measures." Her decision crystallized around responsibility to history. Lost Squadron crew members had survived extreme conditions to preserve their lives and mission, while current expedition represented final opportunity to honor their service through recovering aircraft that embodied American aviation achievement and wartime sacrifice. The ultimate stakes transcended expedition success to involve climate change response, whether heritage preservation could adapt to accelerated environmental change requiring operational risks that traditional archaeology avoided, or whether irreplaceable artifacts would be lost through excessive caution when decisive action might achieve preservation goals. Sarah's choice would determine not just expedition outcome, but broader archaeological response to climate change challenges requiring adaptation that academic traditions hadn't anticipated when environmental conditions provided adequate time for scholarly methodology rather than emergency preservation operations. Sarah made the choice that would either establish new standards for extreme environment archaeology or end her career through catastrophic failure continue extraction operations, despite deteriorating conditions, while implementing emergency protocols that prioritized heritage preservation through calculated risks rather than absolute safety, that climate change timelines couldn't accommodate. We continue operations with enhanced safety protocols and immediate evacuation capability, Sarah announced, while coordinating emergency equipment positioning that could extract personnel rapidly if conditions deteriorated beyond operational thresholds that real-time monitoring would determine. Her transformation from cautious academic to decisive operational leader created immediate atmospheric change as expedition members recognized commitment to completing recovery mission, despite risks that conventional archaeological expeditions would have avoided through standard safety procedures. But Sarah's decision required accepting responsibility for team safety while pursuing heritage preservation goals that demanded pushing operational boundaries beyond academic comfort zones into territory where practical results justified extraordinary measures. The lost squadron waited 82 years for recovery, Sarah explained while directing accelerated extraction operations. Climate change means this is their final chance. We honor their service by accepting reasonable risks to preserve their legacy through operations that match their wartime courage. Sarah's leadership had evolved from scientific research to Heritage Preservation Command, requiring decisions that balanced historical responsibility against operational reality under extreme conditions that demanded commitment beyond academic requirements. As glacial movement accelerated toward critical crevasse zones, while storm systems approached the Greenland ice sheet, Sarah prepared for the most ambitious heritage recovery operation in archaeological history, coordinating simultaneous extraction of multiple aircraft components through accelerated timeline that demanded perfect execution under deteriorating conditions. Her strategy required utilizing all available thermal excavation systems simultaneously, while maintaining safety protocols that could extract personnel immediately if conditions exceeded operational thresholds that real-time glacial monitoring would determine through continuous GPS and stress analysis data. Every team member has emergency evacuation capability within 30 seconds. Sarah briefed while positioning rescue equipment at each extraction site. Heritage preservation is crucial, but no artifact justifies risking lives when we can save most of the lost squadron through careful prioritization of recoverable components. International coordination enabled simultaneous operations at multiple aircraft sites, while emergency weather monitoring provided minute-by-minute updates on approaching storm systems that would terminate operations regardless of progress achieved through accelerated extraction timeline. The expedition had evolved from routine archaeological recovery to emergency heritage preservation, requiring operational tempo that matched wartime urgency, while maintaining scientific documentation standards that would satisfy museum requirements for authentic restoration and historical education about lost squadron significance. Sarah's leadership combined glaciological expertise with operational command that extreme conditions demanded when heritage preservation required pushing archaeological methodology beyond conventional academic limitations. The moment before final extraction created electric atmosphere as Sarah's teams worked simultaneously at multiple lost squadron sites, while glacial monitoring systems provided constant updates on ice movement approaching critical failure thresholds that would make further recovery impossible. Ice stress indicators approaching maximum safe parameters. Expedition engineer reported while thermal excavation systems continued melting access shafts toward aircraft components that required precise extraction techniques within narrow time windows before glacial movement exceeded recovery capability. Sarah's coordination required balancing multiple extraction operations while monitoring weather systems that could terminate expedition with minimal warning through Arctic storm conditions that previous expeditions had learned to avoid through extended operational timelines. Ground-penetrating radar provided real-time imagery of aircraft positions, shifting slightly as glacial movement continued toward crevasse fields, while extraction teams worked against accelerating timeline that climate change had created through unprecedented ice conditions. Final aircraft components coming up now, lead excavation specialist announced, while thermal systems brought pristine P-38 parts to surface through ice shafts that required careful temperature management to prevent damage to preserved components that had maintained remarkable integrity beneath 268 feet of solid ice. The convergence of technological capability, environmental pressure, and international cooperation created perfect conditions for demonstrating whether extreme environment archaeology could achieve heritage preservation despite climate change challenges that traditional methods couldn't accommodate. Sarah's simultaneous extraction operations achieved unprecedented archaeological success as multiple lost squadron aircraft yielded components preserved in remarkable condition, validating thermal excavation techniques while demonstrating that heritage preservation could succeed despite extreme environmental challenges that had delayed operations until critical climatic windows. First P-38 Lightning Wing section successfully extracted, field coordinator announced, while thermal systems continued accessing deeper components that showed minimal degradation despite decades of ice pressure that should have damaged delicate aircraft structures beyond restoration capability. Her coordination enabled systematic documentation of each recovered component while maintaining extraction pace that glacial movement demanded through accelerated timeline incompatible with traditional archaeological methodology that deliberate scholarly approaches typically required. The recovered aircraft components exceeded preservation expectations with original paint functioning, hydraulic systems, and even personal items left by pilots during their 1942 emergency landing preserved through ice conditions that had created perfect conservation environment. International media coverage documented unprecedented recovery success, while expedition members worked against approaching weather deadlines that would determine whether complete lost squadron extraction could be achieved before environmental conditions prevented further operations. Sarah's success created immediate complications, as recovered aircraft quality exceeded restoration expectations while generating international demand for museum display that required careful distribution among heritage organizations whose support had enabled comprehensive recovery operations. Aircraft preservation is so complete, we're recovering operational components rather than archaeological fragments. Restoration specialists observed while examining P-38 parts that showed minimal wear, despite 82 years of ice burial that had preserved them beyond theoretical possibilities. The exceptional preservation created authentication challenges, as components appeared too pristine for their age, requiring extensive documentation to verify historical authenticity for museums and collectors whose acquisitions needed scholarly validation rather than appearance-based assessment. Weather monitoring indicated shortened operational windows as storm systems approached, while multiple aircraft remained accessible through continuing extraction operations that could achieve complete lost squadron recovery if environmental conditions permitted final excavation phases. International coordination required rapid decisions about component distribution among partner organizations, while ensuring scientific documentation standards that would satisfy academic requirements for heritage preservation, rather than commercial interests in recovered artifacts. The climactic moment arrived when Sarah's teams successfully extracted final critical components from multiple lost squadron aircraft just hours before glacial movement would have carried remaining parts into irretrievable crevasse zones, achieving complete recovery mission success against environmental odds that had seemed impossible. All priority aircraft components successfully recovered, Sarah announced, while monitoring glacial movement data showing ice formations approaching critical stress thresholds that would have made further extraction impossible within hours of successful completion. Her operational success demonstrated that extreme environment archaeology could achieve heritage preservation goals when scientific expertise combined with decisive leadership adapted academic methodology to urgent environmental conditions that climate change created. "The lost squadron is finally home," expedition member commented while secured aircraft components prepared for transport to restoration facilities that would return World War II fighters to display condition for educational and memorial purposes. The successful extraction validated thermal recovery techniques while proving that international cooperation could overcome environmental challenges when heritage preservation required operational tempo, exceeding traditional archaeological timelines that normal conditions typically permitted. Storm systems arrived within hours of final extraction, confirming that operational window had closed permanently for future recovery attempts at locations where glacial movement would carry any remaining artifacts beyond technological reach, regardless of future expedition capabilities. Sarah's achievement represented complete success in heritage preservation mission that had pushed archaeological boundaries beyond conventional limitations, while honoring lost squadron service through recovering aircraft that embodied American aviation achievement during World War II. Sarah's comprehensive lost squadron recovery created new standards for extreme environment archaeology, while achieving heritage preservation success that validated international cooperation and technological innovation in cultural resource protection despite climate change challenges. Her extraction techniques enabled complete aircraft recovery while maintaining scientific documentation standards that satisfied museum requirements for authentic restoration and historical education about lost squadron significance that previous partial recoveries couldn't provide. This recovery changes everything we understand about archaeological preservation in extreme environments. International heritage official commented while reviewing comprehensive component recovery that exceeded all previous expedition achievements in Arctic conditions. The breakthrough extended beyond individual success to establish operational frameworks for heritage preservation under climate change conditions that threatened irreplaceable artifacts throughout polar regions, requiring immediate attention rather than traditional academic timelines. Sarah's expedition proved that scholarly expertise could adapt to operational requirements when environmental urgency demanded pushing archaeological methodology beyond conventional limitations, while maintaining scientific integrity that heritage preservation required for authentic historical education. Sarah's Lost Squadron recovery triggered international recognition for extreme environment archaeology, while recovered aircraft components enabled complete restoration for museums throughout America and Europe that would display preserved World War II heritage for future generations. The expedition's success influenced Arctic heritage preservation policies, while demonstrating that climate change demanded accelerated archaeological operations, requiring operational approaches that traditional academic methodology needed to accommodate through adaptive techniques. Most importantly, Sarah's achievement honored Lost Squadron service through recovering aircraft that preserved American aviation heritage, while proving that international cooperation could achieve heritage preservation despite environmental challenges that individual efforts couldn't overcome through conventional archaeological approaches requiring collaborative innovation. Sarah's Lost Squadron recovery triggered immediate transformation of extreme environment archaeology as her successful techniques enabled heritage preservation operations throughout polar regions where climate change threatened irreplaceable artifacts, requiring urgent extraction before environmental conditions eliminated recovery possibilities permanently. International museums received pristine World War II aircraft components that enabled complete restoration displays honoring Lost Squadron service, while educational programs utilized recovered artifacts for teaching aviation history and Arctic survival that previous partial recoveries couldn't provide comprehensively. The expedition's success influenced Arctic heritage policies, while demonstrating that climate change demanded collaborative international approaches to archaeological preservation, requiring technological innovation and operational flexibility that traditional academic methodology needed to accommodate through adaptive techniques. Scientific documentation from the recovery provided unprecedented data about ice preservation conditions while validating ground-penetrating radar techniques for locating buried artifacts that future expeditions could utilize throughout polar regions, requiring heritage preservation before climate change eliminated recovery opportunities permanently. Sarah's achievement established new operational standards for extreme environment archaeology, while proving that scholarly expertise could adapt to urgent environmental conditions requiring decisive action rather than traditional academic timelines that climate change had made inadequate. 2 years later, Sarah's influence on heritage preservation extended throughout international archaeological communities, as her lost squadron techniques became standard methodology for climate-threatened artifact recovery, requiring urgent operations that traditional academic approaches couldn't accommodate within environmental timelines. The Lindqvist Protocol became standard procedure for extreme environment heritage preservation, while Arctic research stations adopted her technological integration of ground-penetrating radar with thermal extraction systems that enabled comprehensive artifact recovery despite challenging conditions. Her expedition influenced international climate adaptation policies while demonstrating that heritage preservation required operational approaches matching environmental urgency, rather than traditional scholarly timelines that climate change had made obsolete for threatened archaeological sites. Lost Squadron Memorial Foundation utilized recovered aircraft for traveling educational displays, while Sarah's documentation provided comprehensive historical resources for teaching World War II aviation and Arctic survival that previous partial recoveries couldn't support through authentic artifact presentations. The expedition influenced military heritage recognition programs, while proving that international cooperation could achieve preservation goals when environmental challenges required technological innovation and operational flexibility that individual national efforts couldn't provide through conventional archaeological approaches requiring collaborative solutions. Sarah evolved from academic researcher to recognized heritage preservation leader, whose lost squadron recovery validated extreme environment archaeology, while demonstrating that scholarly expertise could achieve practical results when environmental urgency required operational adaptation beyond traditional academic limitations. Her transition from theoretical glaciology to practical archaeology enabled continued leadership, while her expertise in extreme environment operations benefited international heritage preservation throughout polar regions requiring urgent intervention before climate change eliminated recovery opportunities. Heritage preservation serves future generations better than academic perfection that climate change prevents, Sarah often explains during international training programs. Urgent action preserves irreplaceable artifacts that traditional methodology would lose through excessive caution when environmental conditions demand decisive intervention. Sarah's story proves that heritage preservation can succeed despite extreme environmental challenges when scholarly expertise adapts to operational requirements, while demonstrating that international cooperation and technological innovation enable archaeological success when climate change demands urgent action rather than traditional academic timelines that environmental conditions cannot accommodate. Today, Dr. Sarah Lindqvist directs the International Arctic Heritage Preservation Institute, where her lost squadron recovery techniques train archaeologists worldwide, while recovered aircraft continue educating future generations about World War II aviation and Arctic survival through museum displays that honor fallen heroes. Her breakthrough expedition proved that extreme environment archaeology could adapt to climate change challenges while preserving irreplaceable heritage that traditional methods would have lost to environmental conditions that demanded urgent intervention rather than academic caution. The lost squadron aircraft, now displayed in museums throughout America and Europe, serve as permanent memorials to the crews who survived impossible Arctic conditions during their 1942 emergency landing, while Sarah's recovery techniques continue enabling heritage preservation operations throughout polar regions, where climate change threatens artifacts requiring immediate attention before environmental conditions eliminate recovery possibilities forever. Her transformation from cautious academic to decisive operational leader demonstrates that scholarly expertise can achieve practical heritage preservation when environmental urgency requires pushing archaeological boundaries beyond conventional limitations while maintaining scientific integrity that future generations deserve through preserved artifacts that embody human achievement and sacrifice. The Greenland ice sheet, where the lost squadron waited 82 years for recovery, now hosts training programs teaching Sarah's techniques to international teams whose urgent missions preserve threatened heritage before climate change eliminates recovery opportunities that technology and courage can still achieve through collaborative determination that honors both historical memory and environmental responsibility, proving that some frozen secrets are worth the extraordinary effort required to bring them home to the warm embrace of grateful recognition and permanent preservation for those who come after us, to learn from examples of human endurance that ice could preserve, but only human dedication could finally rescue from the depths of time and cold that had protected them until someone cared enough to dive deep beneath the surface and bring their stories back to light.